This is Loxley Wood, and I've just done what I never ever do: get in my old van and drive 50 miles to shoot a video. Usually, because I shoot videos in my spare time, I shoot videos of what I see as and when I see it. I've been thinking about woodlands for a long time, working in woodlands, writing management plans for woodlands. And if I see stuff, yeah, there's quite a lot that I think would interest people. And I've been posting videos for 3 years, and that's basically turned out to be true. The channel isn't huge, in fact it's rather small, but I have a lot of comments from a lot of people commenting on the standard of my videos and what they learn from my videos, which is why I post. Not to big myself up, but to put out information, get people to ask questions. Hopefully they'll learn, and what I know can be passed on in a way which is more immediate than me, say, writing articles, which are basically read by limited numbers of people. So what we're here to do today, because as I say, I snookered myself. Came in, shot 2 videos. First one I posted a week ago. It's had quite a lot of response because I criticised the managers of this site, Woodland Trust, for the work that I saw here. And this video is going to explain what I would do as an alternative to what they did, and explain why I think that. So we're going to walk up here and turn left. That's where we just came from, and that's a field maple, and these are all dieback affected ash, apart from that one, which is a larch. And this is where we walked last time. Hopefully you've seen that video and you'll recognise it. This is a dieback affected ash because pretty well all of them in this woodland are affected in one way, shape or form. It's growing back really fast since it was cut last November, and then the deer have eaten it. That's a larch or a Norway spruce. Not really good enough to tell. Just from a stump. I need to see the foliage. And that's an ash with a ding up the trunk where it's been hit by the harvester. Because all this was done by a harvester. And that's the same story on that ash as that first one we saw. And I think that one's a larch. That's been cut off. The timber's been taken out, and this is the ride that they took it out on. Not a ride that's been formally established. Basically they've cut and dropped and kind of laid the material they've cut and dropped with little excursions to the side, so that it was less likely that they were to dig in. But they've still created compaction damage because of the technique that they used to do the harvesting, a big machine. As is the way with forestry, the default position for actually managing a woodland, or an aspect of the woodland, in this case removing conifers, because that is a capital G good, capital T thing, isn't it? And also removing dieback killed ash, is to come in with minimum numbers of people and maximally efficient techniques, i.e. big machinery, and take out the product and then leave it. This is what they've done here. As you saw in the first video that I shot, I hate seeing this sort of thing, because as you saw in the preamble, these trees go back a long way, and they're probably older than these trees, and they're certainly older than these trees, much older. Yeah, something like that, what you see standing up, is maybe 30 years old, but the stool itself is a lot older. So what I would be interested in doing here is, right, okay, thinking on the fly, that's the main ride we just walked up. Let's do it that way round. So that's the main gate. And then we basically walked up here, went through the narrow bit, then we turned left and we've gone off here. So what I would like to see done here is we do some coppice. Not coppicing like that. That ain't coppicing, that's just destruction. So, spiky. Let's say we've walked in here. What we could do is come in here, come in first with people working by hand, then coppice all the stalls. So instead of lifting it, picking it up, putting it to one side for it to die, you cut it, and then if you avoid it with the wheels of your harvester, the thing needn't die. And you do that with all the hazel in here. And then you use some of the larch, which is naturally durable, remember, and you put in an enclosure to keep the deer out. Because we've just seen, and we can see over here on this tree, low down, deer damage here is phenomenal. And I don't think the Woodland Trust as policy actually cull deer. I might be wrong on that. I'd be rather pleased to learn that I'd be wrong on that. So you've got an area, half an acre to an acre in extent, with posts put in at intervals, made of naturally durable larch, so it doesn't have to go off site, you don't have to buy it in. And then you put in a little bit of money and you actually use permanent fencing to keep the deer out. You turn this area into hazel coppice, or turn it back into hazel coppice. Any oaks that are here, and there is one down on the left. Can't remember quite where he is, but I saw him last time. I think he's that one there. See that slightly wibbly wobbly one? Any ash that's remaining in your coppice area, you leave to grow on as waivers, with the potential to grow into standards in due course. So they get to say 100, 120 years old. So you've got the coppice, you've got any surviving ash, which would also run as coppice, and you cut this coppice every 7 years. You've also got this main ride, and if you cut that and manage it as a ride, so that on the edge of the woodland you've got a woodland edge which goes from tall trees up on the left down to your ride, and your ride is here, so you're looking at my finger, not at the background. If you do that, then you've basically got lots of chances for things to live along the ride, to live in the coppice, and there's lots of species which are dependent upon coppice. And if you do another one of these further up, say here, in there, so it doesn't quite meet, you've got very, very good conditions linked by your frequently managed habitat on the ride to get maximum biodiversity. Maximum diversity of habitat and structure. And where you get maximum habitat diversity, you get maximum biodiversity. And I think by doing that, you could increase the biodiversity value of this woodland almost immediately. Also, you get data from putting in these and monitoring them, and then comparing the regrowth here to what's going on here and along unfenced areas on your ride. Ecology is all about data. If you close your eyes to data, you close your eyes to potential improvements in the management of the site. Also, the more data you have, the less likely you are to cock things up, because ecology is about long-term thinking, not short-term thinking. And this is long-term thinking because it reaches right the way back into the past, and it could reach right the way into the future, because this is low input. It doesn't need the big machines, it doesn't need the big machines' fuel, it doesn't need you to go go and work on large areas. This is about 3/4 of an acre. That's all you need to do per year. Of course, you could turn this whole woodland back to coppice and do, say, 1/7 per year, but that's probably not sustainable. This could be sustainable because there are small scale local markets that can be developed by people who want to work in coppice, and they do exist in Somerset, and this site could support that, support the coppice infrastructure, which in contrast to the forestry infrastructure has almost entirely disappeared. And if you look over here, you can see how much hazel there is here. There's a lot. This would restore, it would restore quickly, and it would restore well. Also, by putting in those areas to keep deer out, you would improve the ground flora, because at the moment the deer are eating off the ground flora and they're hitting it hard. Look, this is bramble. This is all deer damage. By the time they start eating the bramble, they're hungry. There's been studies done about the diets of deer, roe deer specifically. And it turns out when the populations of roe deer increase, they start hitting bramble, and that becomes a lot of their diet. So anyway, hope that makes sense. This is all unscripted, and there's a lot to think about on this wood, which I think, from what I know of Woodland Trust operations, applies on a lot of their woods, because their management appears to be quite minimalist. I don't think that's right, certainly not right in all cases. Well, let's have a womble down here. This again is deer damage. And here. And here, this is the round-leaved sallow, or sallow, one of the round-leaved willows. And here we have where we had a foray into the body of the woodland with a harvester. And you can see the compaction damage. It'll take years to sort out. Hawthorn. Deer damage. Larch, another larch. And a side adventure. Then the main ride, which goes all the way up towards the main road. And you can see trees cut through here. Some left there, some of which have been wind thrown. And all the ash are showing some signs of ash dieback, some more than others. So the question's got to arise at some point. Why do this at all? Why not just leave the wood? Ah, you cry. You've been advocating more intervention. Coppicing. But if you took the main ride and the 3/4 acre to an acre plots zigzagging up the side, that would only be a very small part of this woodland, which is a big, long, thin woodland. And you wouldn't have the damage that's been caused here. You can see where they've laid the brash. This is some guy working the harvester quite skillfully to reduce the amount of compaction damage, but it's pretty thin. And again, here's another hazel stalk that's been picked up, moved bodily. This one looks like it's not dead yet, which is kind of nice. It might do a phoenix tree. Another one here pushed over. All pushed over up there. So yeah, why do this at all? Because you want to reduce the potential liability to people using the main ride from these things dropping branches, and they do drop branches. A bit of wind, something like that. You can see there on the left, follow my finger up, it's dropped a fairly large branch. and they get to a state where they drop a whole big branch, or even the whole tree can snap over. So you want to do that, yeah, that's okay, that's a good plan. But why do it on this scale? Why not just work along the main ride, come in little areas, little ways? Why go all the way through into the centre of the woodland? And the biggest question is, why remove the conifers? Why not let them trundle along, especially as they're mostly larch? Larch has a summer-only canopy. It's deciduous, despite it being a conifer, and it doesn't cast a very dense shade. It's probably the least worst that you can do if you're plantationising an area of ancient woodland. Not that I'd advocate that at all, but because it's here, why not make use of it? Why not come in and fell by hand? Fill it towards the ride, leave it in tree lengths, cut off all the side branches, which isn't a lot, and then winch it to the ride for sectioning. And then gather it all into bunches and either use it on site, which would save you money if you're using it, say, peripheral fencing, or to fence out deer as an experiment, or to safeguard coppice, or to safeguard a trial plot within untouched woodland, to find out exactly what effect your deer are having and how that's going to change in the future as deer populations continue to increase, which they are. There's no getting around that. There is no large-scale coppicing of deer. Individual landowners are doing it, then selling off the venison. But there's no large-scale, landscape-scale culling of deer. In order for deer numbers to have negligible impacts on natural regeneration within woodlands, they've done work in America on the east coast with white-tailed deer, and they're looking for forestry type management, so cut, regrow through natural regeneration, then cut again, similar to what is apparently going on here. And they've decided that in order to get good regeneration, they must get their deer populations down to below 8 per square mile. That's 8 per square mile. Well, where I live in Wool, and from the damage I'm seeing here, there's a hell of a lot more than 8 per square mile here. Also, the deer populations in Britain now are far greater than they've ever been in recorded history, and probably into prehistory, because not only do we have the native roe deer and red deer, which have long been extinct, we also have fallow deer brought in by the Romans, seeker deer. There are literally herds of those, and they're affecting agricultural crops around where I live in Wool and Wareham, and they're spreading this way. We have muntjac and other species of deer as well in various places around the country, and the numbers of all species are increasing, and this is something which is going to affect our woodlands in the future. If you're a dyed in the wool rewilder, you might say that increasing numbers of browsers makes for increased biodiversity. It mimics, in inverted commas, what we used to have in prehistory when we had aurochs and giant elk and beaver. But what you must remember, if you're thinking along those lines, is that all deer, in broad terms, graze in a similar manner. So you're not necessarily improving structural diversity just by having deer. In fact, you're reducing it. You're reducing ground flora, which is incredibly important in woodlands and ancient woodlands specifically, and you're reducing the amount of natural regeneration of native trees, which is the future of your woodland. So basically that's why I criticised Woodland Trust, and I hope I can bash that into a not too long video, and I hope it makes sense. But that's basically why I thought my criticism was valid. I'm not wishing to do the Woodland Trust down, I'm wishing to criticise them, hoping to change what they do, or at least get them to explain their rationale, because that's not explained in the management plan for this site.